Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Marriage and Medicine. Today's talk, we would just like to talk about gender roles and kind of what we think about those.
Okay, so I'm gonna toss it back to you.
Go for it.
Do you believe in traditional gender roles as far as like the woman is supposed to stay at home and raise the kids and do all the cooking and cleaning and house and kid duty, and then the guy is the one that goes off to work. They provide financially, they're the protector of the house or like the leader of the home, all of that.
Yeah, so what I would say is, so there are certain roles that a man definitely needs to be able to provide for. He needs to be able to be a protector. He definitely needs to be able to contribute to the house financially from that standpoint. But I do not believe in the traditional gender roles as it is. Women in today's society have the ability to earn just as much of a living as well as men are. Things are much different than they were back in the day, back in the early 1900s, those kind of things, to where it doesn't have to be traditional gender roles at this time. Now, not saying there's nothing wrong with having those kind of traditional situations. For example, I mean, we are kind of, in a sense, living the traditional role where I'm now making the money, and then basically being a provider for financially for the house, and then Jasmine's kind of taking care of most of the things at home. But she wanted to go out and work, which she has worked before. If she wanted to go back to work, that would be no issue at all. Mainly because I believe traditional roles are kind of a little bit outdated from a standpoint of things have to be able to be flexible. Things cannot be rigid to where this person has to do these things and the other person has to do certain things as well. There has to be some fluidity in order to make a marriage work appropriately.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they can be. Sometimes people look at it as like it has to be all or nothing. Either like you do all of these things or you don't do any of these things. And I feel like to a degree they're good as far as like kind of setting a guideline, I guess, if you will. But as far as like following it exactly 100%, I don't typically agree with that. Just because, like you were saying, like women nowadays are out there going to work, they're starting their own businesses, and they're doing things just like men are doing. Whereas,
Right.
in the past, that wasn't the case. And then sometimes you even see that the guys are the ones
Yeah.
that tend to end up staying at home and they like doing that. And the wife is the one that actually goes out and works, and that's what works for their family. So I feel like traditional gender roles can be like maybe a good starting point, but I don't feel like it has to be either all or nothing. Like I feel like you kind of have to take them and look at your family dynamic,
Right.
and figure out what works for your family and just base it on that. Like you can't base it off of what everybody else is doing. And so we'll talk about like our roles and kind of how they've changed, because I do feel like they have changed
Right.
over.
Oh
We've
yeah,
both
for
been
sure.
married like 6 years in May, and been together for 11 years. So it's definitely not stayed the same the entire time. And so I'm trying to think. When we first started dating, we didn't have any
So I mean,
real,
yeah, we
yeah,
were dating, so
we
it
didn't
wasn't
have
really
any
too
real
much.
roles. And I think that can be the problem too sometimes, is because when people date, a lot of people or some people will try to live together, and to each their own with that. I wouldn't recommend it, but some people will live together and then you kind of get caught in like you have to abide by these roles, like, oh, if we're dating and living together now, like I'm expected to cook for you or I'm expected to clean our house, and it's
Right.
like, but we're not married.
Right.
So like I have to provide wifely duties
But
to someone
yeah,
that's not my
not your husband.
husband.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think that's appropriate to do. If you're not married, I don't feel like the husband should be providing husband duties to a girlfriend, and vice versa. It's almost kind of like, why at that point would you make a further commitment in your relationship when you're already getting
All the things.
all the perks?
Exactly.
Like
All the
there's
perks.
no reason to go from dating to getting married or whatever, because I already get all those things right now. So that's just my thought on that whole thing as far as dating. But
Yeah.
once we got married, I'll let you share how it was at the beginning, like
Yeah.
when you were in medical school and stuff.
Right. So when we got married, so there was basically, we got married after my first year of medical school. Before that, I essentially was using loans and those kind of things to try to get me by, because of course in medical school you can't work. So once we actually got married, the first year after we got married, which was during my second year of medical school, she was actually still working in Virginia, and I was doing medical school in North Carolina. So she was still making the money. We had a joint account together. And essentially I took out loans for like the basically paying rent for the year and those kind of things. But all of the actual living costs, such as like getting groceries and anything fun that we want to do whenever she would come down to visit, or I would go visit her, which I always visited for the most part, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
you did.
Then in those situations, she basically covered all of that. That was all from her working. And so from
And
that
working
standpoint,
on a teacher salary,
yeah, exactly.
which is like
It's a little
not
bit,
great at all.
not great.
And I first was working on a daycare salary, which was like even lower.
Yeah.
And then it went up a little bit with teaching, but
Right. It's rough, but we made it through. You know, we lived in a low cost of living area, so we were able to kind of make money stretch a little bit more than other places. But ultimately, at that time, I was essentially the stay-at-home husband in a sense, and she was the breadwinner from that standpoint. Again, because of school and everything. But essentially, again, things changed. So pretty much that's how it initially started, and then
But
that's
then-
essentially go ahead.
too, like not just outside of working, when it came to like household things like
Yeah.
cleaning, we each took part in doing that. Like I kind of would be like, okay, on this day we're gonna clean the house or the apartment, and we would just split up cleaning everything. I think with cooking at that point, I think maybe I
You did
did
most of
more,
it, yeah.
but you did do some things too as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, you know, going out and stuff. And then we didn't have kids, so we didn't have that aspect. We had a dog,
Yeah,
so in a
yes.
sense, a kid. And that
And
was
I did most of that. pretty
basically
much.
TJ's
Yeah.
role. So I feel like back then, even though I was the one that was working and you couldn't, we still, for the most part, kind of split roles pretty evenly.
Yeah, and
at
that's
that
also because
point.
like her work was pretty much equal to my school time wise, having to do all the study and all those kind of things. So it just made sense to kind of split things down the middle so that we would both be able to still enjoy life, but also be able to take care of the daily activities that we had to do.
Yeah.
Altogether.
And then now, because TJ's in residency and will be transitioning into being an attending, we already had talked about starting a family when we came to residency. So I knew that working, for me at least, I just didn't want to work. I didn't feel like working anymore. And so I was like, we had talked about it. I said, as long as we can afford to, and we can like pay all of our bills and we're not stressed out, like struggling financially, then I would like to stay home and stay with our child. And so,
And the other reason, it's not just because you didn't want to work. The other reason was, you know, being a teacher, it takes just a bunch of time associated with it. And so trying to juggle that along with raising a kid is difficult. And that's something that if she didn't have to do, it was something that she would rather be able to just raise our kid appropriately. And that was something I was perfectly fine with. That's definitely the most important thing for me, along with her being happy. So it worked out.
yeah, the time management, how I was as a teacher and how I am as a mom, it would have been a lot of, it's not that it's not possible, because I know of plenty of teachers who are also moms and they make it work, but it's a lot of like constant struggle between like, do I focus on my kid or do I focus on my other kids that need me, you know, educational wise? So, but yeah, so we made that choice, and we even talked about like in the first year, if I felt like, you know, I don't like being at home, I could go back to work, no problem.
Right.
Like that wasn't a non-negotiable for us.
And it still isn't. It's like you can do
Yeah.
literally whatever you want to at this point.
And then as far as like all the other roles, you know, of course, TJ is the financial provider now. And so because he's the one that
Not good.
because he's the one that does work and almost in a sense allows me to not have to work, even though I can if I choose to, I feel like I try to handle more of the household and child activities more so than him. Like I try to take on scheduling all the appointments for everybody and like keeping up with everybody's schedules and doing the laundry and cleaning the house and cooking.
That's all me right there.
It's not,
That's all me.
yeah.
Nah.
I was gonna say the cooking. I don't know. I
Nah,
think
it's okay.
originally I started out doing that, but it's
Yeah.
kind of shifted now that TJ's. I don't know.
Actually, for whatever reason, I kind of started to enjoy cooking. So it
Yeah.
was kind of not a big deal at all. And it was also something that would be able to kind of take away some of that time away from her having to do things. So if I enjoy it, might as well go ahead and knock it out and do it.
Yeah, that's one area I want to eventually get a little bit better at. Not that I don't think I'm horrible, but like there's always room to grow. So, but yeah, he typically will do that. I mean, unless his schedule is intense or something, I try to do that for him. But I think for the most part, with how things go right now, we kind of just, those are our roles, but also it's not like set in stone. Like if we see somebody is struggling with something or they're having a harder time, we'll easily just step in for the other person. I think for the most part, like if we see there's something that needs to get done,
Yeah,
we
just
kind
do
of
it.
just do it. It's not really like, well, he's the one that's supposed to be
Yeah.
doing whatever, so I'm gonna let him do it, or she's supposed to do the laundry, so I'm not touching laundry. So
Yeah. Like, for example, I'm supposed to do the dishes most of the nights. But if basically I'm working for a long time, have a pretty significant schedule, and she sees the dishes piling up, she'll just go ahead and knock them out for me. And vice versa. We pretty much kind of alternate giving Naya baths, different things like that. And
yeah,
so, like,
because Naya hates when I wash her hair, but she's fine when he
perfectly
washes
fine.
her hair.
Yeah.
So we like, okay, you're gonna have to wash her hair once a week for me because she won't let me do it, and then I'll do the other, few days out
nights.
of the week.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like filling in the gap. Like if you see there's a need that has to get done, somebody has to do it either way. And it's not like, well, I've done this all this week and you haven't done anything. Like we just, I don't know, you just learn to get stuff done and just go about your day.
Right, absolutely. The main thing that I would say is early on, we kind of got this this advice from her mom as well. It's like early on in your marriage, make sure that if you're going to start doing something, make sure that it's something that you're going to,
I'm like, what advice did we get?
Make sure that it's something that you do not mind continuing to do throughout the relationship.
Yes.
Mainly because if you start with doing certain things, like you're starting to cook and those kind of things, and the other person doesn't like to cook, and then you get to the point where you're just like, I don't want to cook anymore. It's going to be a lot of friction. It's going to cause a lot of issues. So if there's something that you do initially, just make sure it's something that you enjoy doing and that you don't mind continuing to do.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's good advice. Whatever role you want to pick, make sure you're okay with continuing that for however long it may be. But also at the same time, try to be open to like your roles might change as life goes on. Like if someone decides to go back to school or they work night shifts, like, your role might go from being the one that cooked to now you can't because you're not at home. And so you might have to shift roles a little bit. So I think you both have to be open to roles changing and being okay with that, depending on like what your life situation is like at the time.
And I would say also never hold back your feelings in terms of if something is not working for you, make sure that you let it be known. For example, now I don't clean anymore. Like that.
Yeah,
I
he
used to
does not.
clean.
He hasn't cleaned.
I don't really clean
When's the
anymore.
last time you cleaned? I think medical
It's been a while.
school.
It probably was.
You did a little bit at our other place while we were in
a little bit.
residency, but
Once we moved
pretty
to
much
this
medical
place here-
school is the last time. When we moved to this house, TJ just didn't clean anything at all, and I'm like,
it's all right. I don't know.
so we don't
do that no
vacuum,
more. Nope.
we don't pick up
We don't do that
clothes,
no
we
more.
don't do nothing. He don't even fold his laundry
I
and
do fold my
put it
laundry.
away.
I
I fold
do
it
fold my laundry.
and put it up for him.
She's
You
so
do
nice.
occasionally.
I know. She's just going for
I'm
the
like,
gold
so
star
we
shit.
just, okay, we're not doing nothing here.
But
But at the same time,
yeah.
I kind of know, like I said,
Yeah.
being that he does work a lot and he does take off a lot of the financial burden, I try to look at it as, okay, well, at least I don't have to do that, so let me do this in turn. Like, I try to look at it as, like, he's helping me out with something, so I'm going to help him out with something, versus, like, he don't ever do this kind of thing.
Right.
So-
But of course, like if she gets to a point where she's like, okay, this week I need to clean, but I need some help. Like sure, I'm going to help out. Like, I'm not going to just be like, nope, sorry, not my role. Sorry, you
Yeah.
take care of that. That's not the way a marriage is supposed to go. So definitely always be open to listening to your spouse, your significant other, making sure that you're on the same page with things and make sure that everything is covered, fill in the gaps where it's needed, in order to make sure that your household continues to run smoothly.
And then I would say the final thing is if you need help, like outside of your spouse, to get help, like if you have, I don't know, if your role is supposed to be that you cook, but you know, like out of the two, you're not that great of a cook, but the other person, you know, their schedule doesn't allow for them to cook. Okay, well then look into, like, they have all these meal programs out there where they will literally send you the meal, all the stuff, and you just cook it. You follow the instructions. So like, get help if you need it. If you have, you know, 3 kids under 3 and you're like stressed out because it's just a lot to do, well then hire, you know, maybe a babysitter to come for 3 hours so you can just do whatever it is you need to do for that time period, or just have time alone or whatever. Or something we talked about in the future maybe is like getting someone to clean the house. Not that I can't do it, but that would alleviate more time to be able to do other things. Like eventually Naya's going to be going to school, and I'm sure she'll be doing sports or activities or whatever. And so to be able to have more time for that stuff, then we got to kind of shift some things around a little bit.
Right.
So if you need help with something, or if you just can afford to do so, then I would say to get that extra help wherever you might need it or just want it.
Right, exactly. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys have specific gender roles that you guys have in your household, please feel free to share. We are definitely interested in hearing about your guys' life as well. But thank you for watching our video. We'll see you in the next one.